The alien refugees wasted away under the Sakari tyrant's pitiless gaze as hundreds of spacecraft abandoned them to their inevitable fate. But one human ship remained, risking everything to answer their desperate call for survival. The interstellar freighter RSS Prometheus hung motionless in the void just outside Sakari space, engines thrumming softly as the ship decelerated from its intersystem jump. Captain Dylan Wright leaned close to the sensor readout, eyes narrowing as he spotted the faint distress beacon emanating from the barren moon below. "What do you make of this?" he asked, turning to his second-in-command. Nala, a Falari with tawny fur and piercing green eyes, studied the readings for a moment. "It's using Old Republic encryption, but that can't be right," she muttered. "They're broadcasting just above the frequency used by the resistance during the Kaizant uprising." Dylan rubbed his chin, frowning. Rumors had long circulated of holdouts still clinging to life in Sakari territory after the brutal suppression of the Kaizant rebellion over a decade ago. Most citizens agreed. To defy the Sakari was to invite a swift and painful death. The Sakari claimed to have annihilated all dissent, their empire restored to unquestioning submission. Yet someone still stubbornly defied them, someone begging for aid. The human captain drummed his fingers on the console, weighing the risks against his conscience. The Sakari were not to be trifled with, their cruelty as legendary as their military might. Intervening could provoke a war humanity was ill-prepared to fight, but to abandon fellow sentients to such a cruel fate. In the end, there was no choice at all. "Helmsman, set a course," Dylan ordered. "Take us in nice and quiet. Let's see what this is about." His gut told him this was more than some straggler's last gasp, and that he was about to drag humanity into something far bigger than he could imagine. But he also knew that no matter the danger, he couldn't turn his back on a cry for help. It wasn't just his way, it was the human way. And if that put a target on their backs, so be it. Humanity would deal with the consequences later. Right now, someone needed them. And that was enough. The RSS Prometheus hurtled through the void, its engines straining as it raced towards the safety of Earth space. In the ship's cramped corridors, the rescued alien refugees huddled together, their faces etched with a mix of relief and trepidation. Among them, Ektor's family mourned the loss of their brave patriarch, who had sacrificed his life to ensure their escape from the brutal Sakari. On the bridge, Captain Dylan Wright stood hunched over the communications console, his brow furrowed as he listened to the urgent message from Terran Command. The words that crackled through the speakers sent a chill down his spine. "Captain Wright, be advised. We've intercepted Sakari transmissions indicating they're massing a massive armada to pursue and destroy your vessel. They view your actions as an act of war." Dylan gritted his teeth, his mind racing. "Terran Command, requesting immediate reinforcements from the nearest battle group." There was a pause, then a hesitant reply. "Negative, Captain. The closest support is days away. You're on your own for now." The weight of the situation settled on Dylan's shoulders, but he refused to let it crush him. He turned to his crew, his voice steady and determined. "All right, people. We're not going down without a fight. We need to even the odds. Nala, work with Ektor's family. Learn everything you can about Sakari technology and tactics. We're going to modify our weapons and defenses. Every advantage counts." The crew sprang into action, a flurry of activity filling the ship. Engineers and technicians worked tirelessly, rewiring circuits and reinforcing hull plating. In the midst of the controlled chaos, Dylan found Ektor's eldest son, a haunted look in the alien's eyes. "I'm sorry about your father," Dylan said softly. "He was a brave man." The son nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "He was. Our rebellion. It was a last, desperate attempt to save our people from the Sakari's cruelty. The things they did to us, the enslavement, the genocide." He trailed off, unable to continue. Dylan placed a hand on the alien's shoulder, his eyes hardening with purpose. "I swear to you, I will do everything in my power to protect you and your family. The Sakari will answer for their crimes." As the hours ticked by and the Sakari armada drew closer, Dylan formulated a daring plan. He gathered his crew, his face set with purpose. We can't outrun them forever. We need to make a stand. There's an uninhabited planet nearby with a dense asteroid field surrounding it. We'll lure the Sakari into that hazardous environment, use it to level the playing field. The crew nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew what they were fighting for: the lives of the innocent refugees and the principles of compassion and justice that defined their humanity. As the Prometheus approached the planet, the crew worked feverishly to prepare their defenses. They mined the asteroids with explosives, set up decoy signals to confuse Sakari sensors, and positioned the ship to maximize its firepower. Ektor's family joined in the efforts, using their intimate knowledge of the planet's terrain to help fortify their position. The Sakari armada emerged from hyperspace, a vast array of warships jam-packed with weapons. Dylan stood before his crew, his voice ringing out with conviction. Remember what we're fighting for: the lives of the innocent, the principles that define us. Today we stand against tyranny. Today we show the galaxy what it means to be human. And then the battle erupted, a maelstrom of fire and fury. The Prometheus danced through the asteroid field, drawing the Sakari ships into tight corridors where they could be ambushed and destroyed. Ektor's family provided critical intel on the enemy's weak points, allowing Dylan to target the Sakari vessels with devastating precision. But even with their cunning and bravery, the human ships suffered heavy damage. Consoles exploded, bulkheads buckled, and crew members fell wounded. Dylan gripped the helm, his fist clenched, as he willed his battered ship to hold together. Just when all seemed lost, a blinding explosion lit up the void. The Sakari flagship, caught in a web of asteroids and explosives, shattered into a million pieces. Through the chaos, Dylan saw a small shuttle, piloted by Ektor himself, plunging into the heart of the enemy ship. In a final, selfless act, the alien patriarch had given his life to destroy the Sakari's command center. With their leadership gone and their fleet in disarray, the Sakari fell before the Prometheus's relentless assault. Dylan and his crew pressed the attack, pouring every ounce of their dedication into the fight. Despite the challenges, they emerged victorious, the remnants of the once mighty armada fleeing into the depths of space. In the aftermath of the battle, the crew of the Prometheus mourned their fallen hero. Ektor's sacrifice had turned the tide, ensuring the safety of his family and dealing a crushing blow to the Sakari's reign of terror. Dylan stood among his crew, his heart heavy with the weight of their loss and the magnitude of their victory. As the Prometheus set course for Earth, Dylan knew that this battle was only the beginning. The Sakari would not let this defeat go unanswered. The conflict between humanity and the alien empire had reached a new, terrifying height. But as he looked out at the stars, Dylan also knew that he and his crew had taken a stand against tyranny, had defended the principles of compassion and unity that lay at the core of the human spirit. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would be fraught with peril. But armed with the knowledge of what they had accomplished and the strength of their convictions, Dylan and his crew stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, for they were human, and they would never back down from the fight for what was right. As the RSS Prometheus limped through space, the sudden appearance of a massive human battle fleet on their sensors sent a jolt through the bridge crew. Dylan leaned forward, squinting at the tactical display. "Sir, we're being hailed," the comms officer reported. "On screen," Dylan ordered, straightening his uniform. The grizzled face of Admiral Vance filled the view screen. "Captain Wright, this is Admiral Vance of the Terran Defense Force. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." Dylan's eyes hardened. "Admiral, we have wounded aboard and refugees." "I'm well aware, Captain," Vance cut him off. "Terran Command has declared war on the Sakari Empire. Your actions have sparked a galactic conflict." The bridge fell silent as the weight of those words sank in. Dylan swallowed hard. "Understood, sir. We'll comply." Hours later, Dylan stood at attention in the Admiral's ready room aboard the flagship. Vance paced before him, hands clasped behind his back. Your knowledge of Sakari tactics and technology is invaluable, right? I'm ordering you and your crew to report for immediate debriefing and reassignment. Dylan stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect, I made a promise. Ector's family. Our aliens? Vance snapped. We're at war, Captain. We don't have time for... They risked everything to help us, Dylan insisted. I gave my word they'd be safe. Vance's eyes narrowed, studying Dylan's face. After a long moment, he sighed. Fine. I'll arrange asylum for them on Earth. But after that, you're back on duty. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you. Later, Dylan stood in the hangar bay as Ector's mate and children prepared to board the shuttle to Earth. The alien woman clasped Dylan's hand, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Ector believed in you, she said softly. He always said humans were the key to freeing our people from the Sakari. Thank you for proving him right. Dylan's throat tightened. We won't let his sacrifice be in vain, I promise you that. As the shuttle departed, Dylan turned to find Admiral Vance watching him. Sir, I want to be on the front lines. Let me take the fight to the Sakari. Vance nodded slowly. I was hoping you'd say that. Congratulations, Captain. You've just been promoted and given command of our newest warship, the USS Prometheus. Dylan's eyes widened. Sir, Save it, right? You've got work to do. Intel says the Sakari are planning a massive attack on New Eden Colony. Your mission is to lead a strike force, disrupt their invasion plans, and buy time for evacuation. Understood, sir. When do we leave? Immediately. Good hunting, Captain. Days later, as the USS Prometheus streaked through hyperspace toward New Eden, klaxons blared. Dylan sprinted onto the bridge. Report. Sir, we're picking up a distress signal. Alien vessel, non-Sakari. Dylan frowned. On screen. The battered ship that appeared bore unfamiliar markings. A desperate voice crackled through the speakers. This is Zara of the Vosari Resistance. Our cell has been compromised. We need immediate extraction. Dylan's mind raced. The Vosari, another species crushed under Sakari rule. This could be the intelligence goldmine they needed. Helm, alter course. We're going to rescue those rebels. As the Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace near the crippled Vosari ship, Dylan addressed his crew. This is our chance to gain crucial intel and forge new alliances. Let's show these aliens what humanity stands for. The crew cheered as they moved to execute the rescue operation, unaware of the monumental battle that lay ahead at New Eden, and the desperate struggle for survival that would test them all to their limits. The USS Prometheus limped into Starbase Epsilon, its hull scarred and blackened from the brutal battle at New Eden. As the docking clamps engaged, Dylan exhaled deeply. They'd made it. Crowds of cheering personnel lined the airlock as Dylan and his crew disembarked. Medics rushed forward to tend to the wounded, while station security escorted the shaken New Eden colonists to temporary quarters. Dylan's first officer, Commander Sarah Chen, leaned in close. Sir, Admiral Vance wants us in the war room ASAP. Nodding grimly, Dylan followed her through the throng. They found the Admiral hunched over a holographic display of New Eden, his weathered face etched with concern. Captain Wright, Vance said, straightening up. One hell of a job out there. Thank you, sir, but we lost a lot of good people. Vance's eyes hardened. I know, but thanks to you, we saved over 80% of the colonists. You should be proud. Dylan's teeth gritted. What about the colony itself? The Admiral's shoulders sagged. I'm afraid New Eden has fallen. The Sakari now have a foothold in our space. Damn it, Dylan muttered. And Kravox? Escaped, Vance replied. Intel suggests he's obsessed with hunting you down. You really got under his skin. Before Dylan could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. All personnel, report to Memorial Hall for the ceremony. The vast chamber was packed as Dylan took his place near the front. A sea of somber faces gazed up at the podium where Zara, the Vosari rebel leader, stood. Today we honor those who gave their lives defending New Eden, she began, her voice strong despite her grief. Human and Vosari alike, united against tyranny. Their sacrifice forged a bond between our peoples that the Sakari can never break. Together, we will prevail. The crowd erupted in cheers. Dylan felt a swell of pride, tempered by the weight of what lay ahead. Hours later, he found himself back in Vance's war room. The Admiral's expression was grim as he outlined the situation. With New Eden gone, our defensive line has a massive hole. The Sakari are pouring through. We need to hit back hard and fast. Dylan leaned forward. What did you have in mind, sir? Vance's eyes gleamed. There's a major Sakari shipyard in the Novus sector. If we can take it out, we'll cripple their ability to reinforce their invasion corridor. A bold move, Dylan mused. But how do we get past their defenses? That's where you come in, Captain. I want you to lead the strike force. Dylan nodded, wheels already turning. I'll need the Vosari rebels integrated into my crew. Their knowledge of Sakari tech could be crucial. Agreed, Vance said. Consider it done. Over the next few days, as the Prometheus underwent emergency repairs and upgrades, Dylan and Zara pored over strategic data. They plotted and refined their plan of attack, knowing that every moment counted as Sakari reinforcements streamed toward human space. On the eve of their departure, Dylan was surprised by a visit from Alara, Ector's mate, and her children. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she clasped his hand. Captain Wright, she said softly, you have honored Ector's memory by forging this alliance. Please take this. She pressed a gleaming ceremonial blade into his palm. Let it serve as a symbol of our people's shared struggle for freedom. Dylan's throat tightened as he accepted the gift. I will carry it with pride. As the Prometheus prepared to depart, Dylan addressed his crew, human and Vosari alike. What we do here today could turn the tide of this war. We carry the hopes of two peoples with us. Let's make them proud. With a resounding cheer, they set off on their perilous mission, unaware that the cunning Kravox lay in wait, ready to spring his deadly trap. The Prometheus lurched out of hyperspace, alarms blaring. Dylan's eyes widened as the tactical display lit up with a sea of red dots. Sakari ambush force detected, Lieutenant Chen shouted. Cloaked vessels decloaking all around us. Dylan's stomach dropped as he recognized one particular energy signature. That's Kravox's flagship. He knew we were coming. The bridge crew turned to their captain, awaiting orders. Dylan's mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. Retreat meant failure. Failure meant countless more lives lost to the Sakari war machine. All ahead full, Dylan barked. We're punching straight through their lines. The Prometheus surged forward, its engines straining. Sakari ships materialized around them, energy weapons charging. All batteries open fire, Dylan commanded. Target anything in our path. The human vessel's guns roared to life, filling space with a storm of plasma bolts and missiles. On the weapons console, Zara's fingers danced across the controls, her Vosari eyes picking out vulnerabilities in the Sakari shields. There, she shouted. Port batteries, concentrate fire on grid coordinates 2127 by 84. A Sakari cruiser's shields buckled under the precision barrage, its hull rupturing in a brilliant explosion. The Prometheus plowed through the expanding debris field, rocking from near misses and glancing blows. Kravox's command ship dead ahead, Chen reported. Dylan's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. Helm, on my mark, hard to starboard. The Sakari flagship loomed before them, its massive guns tracking their approach. At the last possible second, Dylan shouted, Now! The Prometheus heeled over sharply, engines screaming as it threaded the needle between Kravox's ship and its escorts. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed they wouldn't make it. The view screen filled with the terrifying sight of Sakari weapon ports mere meters from their hull. Both ships opened fire at point-blank range. The Prometheus shuddered violently as multiple hits registered. Sparks showered from ruptured conduits, and acrid smoke filled the air. Shields at 12%! An ensign cried out. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7! But they were through. The Sakari formation fell away behind them as the Prometheus limped toward the shipyard, leaving chaos in its wake. "Bombers away," Chen reported as Allied craft materialized around them. "Commencing attack run on the shipyard." Dylan nodded grimly. "Cover those bombers at all costs. This is our one shot." The Prometheus unleashed everything it had left, creating a corridor of destruction for the bombers to exploit. On the tactical display, Dylan watched as Zara expertly directed their fire, crippling key defensive systems throughout the sprawling facility. A sudden impact rocked the ship. "Sir!" Chen shouted. "Sakari counterattack incoming. Kravox is leading the charge." Swarms of Sakari fighters and bombers descended upon them. The Prometheus shook under the assault, its weakened shields fluctuating wildly. "Multiple hull breaches," an officer reported. "Sakari boarding parties detected." Dylan's face hardened. "Alara, take your team and reinforce our security details. We can't let them take control of vital systems." The Vosari woman nodded, her eyes blazing with drive as she led her fighters from the bridge. For what felt like hours, the battle raged throughout the ship. Dylan and Zara worked in perfect sync, orchestrating their dwindling forces to repel wave after wave of Sakari attackers. The deck plates vibrated with the impact of close-quarters combat as Alara's team fought to hold key junctions. "Sir!" Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "The last bomber wing is making its final run!" Dylan watched with grim satisfaction as the shipyard's primary reactor went critical, consuming the facility in a massive fireball. "Mission accomplished," he said quietly. Then, raising his voice, "All hands, prepare for emergency jump. Reroute all available power to the hyperdrive." The Prometheus's engines flared as it turned to flee the devastation. Suddenly, a massive blast from Kravox's flagship slammed into their stern. "Navigation systems critically damaged," Chen reported, her voice tinged with panic. "We can't plot an accurate jump." Dylan's mind raced. They had mere seconds before Kravox closed in for the kill. In a flash of desperate inspiration, he made his decision. "Jettison all non-essential systems," he ordered. "Feed every scrap of power to the hyperdrive. Plot a rough vector towards Allied space using whatever nav data we have left." The crew worked frantically, and the ship groaned as if in protest. Dylan stared at the view screen, watching Kravox's vengeful face grow larger by the second. "Jump now!" Dylan roared. Space twisted around them as the Prometheus vanished in a burst of energy, leaving behind a thwarted but ever more determined enemy. The Prometheus lurched out of hyperspace, its hull groaning under the strain. Dylan staggered to his feet, smoke stinging his eyes as he surveyed the damage on the bridge. "Status report," he barked. Lieutenant Chen coughed, wiping soot from her console. "Sir, we've emerged in an uncharted system. Long-range scanners are offline, but preliminary data suggests we're far beyond the galactic rim." Dylan's stomach dropped. "Life support?" "Critical," Chen replied. "We're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Engineering reports main power at 12% and falling." Zara burst onto the bridge, her Vasari eyes wide with urgency. "Captain, we need to act fast. I've got teams sealing breaches, but we're running out of emergency patches." Dylan nodded grimly. "Prioritize life support and power distribution. We need to buy time." For hours, the skeleton crew worked tirelessly. Dylan crawled through Jeffrey's tubes, manually rerouting power conduits as Zara's voice crackled over the comm, guiding his every move. "No, not that junction," she snapped. "Connect the polarity inverter to the auxiliary plasma manifold. It's not pretty, but it'll hold." Days blurred together as they fought to keep the ship intact. Dylan stumbled into the mess hall, bleary-eyed from another grueling shift. He found Zara slumped over a table, her fingers still wrapped around a half-finished cup of synthetic caffeine. "Zara," he said softly, shaking her shoulder. "We need to talk options." She blinked awake, exhaustion etched on her face. "We're out of options, Dylan. At this rate, we've got maybe 2 weeks of life support left." Dylan's eyes hardened. "Then we make hard choices. Gather the senior staff." An hour later, Dylan stood before his haggard crew. "I'm ordering all non-essential personnel into cryostasis," he announced. "It's the only way to conserve our dwindling resources." Murmurs of shock rippled through the room. Alara stepped forward, her children clinging to her legs. "Captain, I volunteer myself and my little ones. We cannot contribute to repairs, but perhaps our sacrifice will give you the time you need." Dylan nodded, his throat tight. "Thank you, Alara. Your courage honors us all." Over the next week, Dylan watched as crew members were sealed into cryopods, their faces frozen in uneasy sleep. The corridors grew eerily quiet as the ship's population dwindled to a skeleton crew. Zara worked feverishly, her unorthodox methods yielding results where traditional repairs failed. Dylan found her elbow deep in a tangle of wires, sweat beading on her forehead. "I think I've got it," she muttered. "If I cross-link the subspace antenna with the deflector dish..." A console suddenly flickered to life, emitting a weak beep. Zara's eyes widened. "We've got signal. Faint, but it's there. A deep space monitoring array on the edge of human space." Dylan's heart raced as he punched in the coordinates for a tight beam transmission. "This is Captain Dylan Wright of the USS Prometheus. We are stranded in uncharted space. Critical systems failing. Request immediate assistance." For agonizing minutes they waited. Finally, a response crackled through. "Prometheus, this is Starbase Echo. We've triangulated your position. Nearest repair ships are 4 weeks away at maximum warp. Hold on as long as you can." Dylan's shoulders sagged. "We'll be dead in half that time," he said quietly. Zara's eyes gleamed with sudden intensity. "Not if we take a chance. Captain, let me boost our distress signal. Broadcast on all frequencies." "That could bring the Sakari down on us," Dylan warned. "Or it could bring help," Zara countered. "What choice do we have?" Dylan nodded grimly. "Do it." For days they waited, rationing their last scraps of food and recycled air. Just as hope began to fade, a massive ship dropped out of warp beside them. Its hull bristled with weaponry, dwarfing the Prometheus. "Unknown vessel, state your intentions," Dylan demanded, his voice hoarse. A booming voice replied, "We are the Ziri. You broadcast distress. We answer." Relief flooded through Dylan as the massive aliens docked with the Prometheus. The Ziri towered over the human crew, their bulky forms filling the corridors as they set to work with astonishing efficiency. Within hours, the Prometheus's critical systems were stabilized. Dylan watched in awe as the Ziri fabricated replacement parts from raw materials with casual ease. "Your ship design primitive," one Ziri engineer grunted. "We improve." As repairs continued, Dylan learned of the Ziri's unique history. Centuries of genetic cultivation had produced a race of unparalleled warriors and craftsmen, allowing them to resist Sakari domination where others had fallen. Dylan saw the potential immediately. "We need your help," he urged the Ziri leader. "The Sakari threaten all free species. Together we could—" "No," the alien interrupted. "Ziri fight for Ziri only. Outsiders bring risk, bring weakness." Frustration gnawed at Dylan. They were so close to a game-changing alliance, but the Ziri's isolationist stance seemed unshakable. It was Alara who finally broke the impasse. As the cryostasis pods were thawed, she approached the Ziri matriarchs, her children in tow. With quiet dignity, she recounted the fall of her homeworld, the loss of her mate, and her unwavering drive to see her people free. The Ziri females listened intently, their stoic faces softening. One matriarch stepped forward, placing a massive hand on Alara's shoulder. "Your strength honors your people," she rumbled. "Perhaps there is wisdom in cooperation." Hope swelled in Dylan's chest as negotiations began in earnest. The Ziri agreed to transport the Prometheus to their nearest outpost for comprehensive repairs and upgrades. In exchange, Alara and the Vasari would share their hard-won knowledge of Sakari tactics and weaknesses. As the Prometheus limped alongside the Ziri battle fleet, Dylan allowed himself a moment of optimism. With these powerful new allies, Humanity's chances against the Sakari Empire had improved dramatically. His relief was short-lived. As they approached the Shiri staging grounds, a priority transmission cut through the static. "Sir," Chen called out, her face pale. "We've intercepted a Sakari communication. It's about Kravox." Dylan's blood ran cold as he read the message. Kravox hadn't given up. If anything, the Sakari commander's obsession with destroying them had grown even stronger. "All hands," Dylan announced, his voice steady despite the dread in his gut. "Prepare for—" Dylan stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The massive Ziri staging grounds sprawled beneath them, a hive of activity as the last preparations were made. "Sir, incoming transmission from Ziri Command," Lieutenant Chen reported, her fingers flying over the console. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the towering form of the Ziri matriarch. Her voice rumbled through the bridge. "Captain Wright, we have grave news." Dylan listened intently as the matriarch detailed Kravox's obsessive vendetta. The Sakari commander's face appeared on screen, twisted with hatred. "He's been given carte blanche by Sakari High Command," Dylan muttered, his stomach churning. "A whole strike force dedicated to wiping us out." Zara stepped forward, her Vasari eyes narrowed. "We've dealt him setbacks before. We'll do it again." The matriarch's expression darkened further. "There's more. Kravox has uncovered evidence of our support for resistance cells. The Sakari now view all Ziri as enemies to be crushed." Alarms blared across the shipyard. Scout ships streaked past the view screen, their engines flaring as they raced to defensive positions. "Kravox's forces detected," an officer shouted. "Multiple contacts employing hit-and-run tactics throughout the system." Dylan's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. The Ziri matriarch's voice cut through the chaos. "We will not flee. We will turn Kravox's aggression against him." As the matriarch outlined their audacious counterstrike, Dylan watched a team of Ziri engineers swarming over the Prometheus. They integrated pulsing crystalline structures into the hull, enhanced weapon batteries humming with newfound power. Zara and Alara gathered a group of Ziri warriors, their massive forms dwarfing the Vosari. "The key is to exploit their blind spots," Zara explained, projecting a schematic of a Sakari warship. "Their ventral sensor arrays have a critical weakness." Days blurred together as preparations intensified. Dylan pored over star charts with Ziri tacticians, plotting the intricate dance that would lure Kravox into their trap. Finally, the moment arrived. Dylan stood before his crew, a mix of humans, Vosari, and Ziri volunteers. Alara stepped forward, her voice ringing out. "Today, we strike a blow not just for ourselves, but for every species ground under the Sakari boot," she declared. "When Kravox falls, it will light a spark of rebellion across the galaxy." A roar of approval shook the deck plates. Dylan gave the order, and the Prometheus surged forward on its solitary patrol. It didn't take long for Kravox to take the bait. The massive Sakari flagship emerged from hyperspace, flanked by sleek escort vessels. "Evasive maneuvers," Dylan barked. "Take us into the asteroid field." The Prometheus dove and weaved through the tumbling rocks. Sakari weapons fire lanced past them, vaporizing asteroids in blinding flashes. "Deploying countermeasures," Zara reported, her fingers dancing across the tactical console. A swarm of decoys and sensor-jamming probes erupted from the Prometheus. On the monitor, Dylan watched Kravox's ships falter, their formation breaking apart as they struggled to maintain a lock. Deeper and deeper, they plunged into the maze of asteroids. Warning klaxons blared as Sakari ships closed in from multiple vectors. "Now!" Dylan shouted. The asteroid field erupted in chaos. Ziri warships decloaked, their weapons blazing. Pinpoint strikes disabled Sakari engines and weapon systems. The Prometheus pivoted sharply, bringing its upgraded arsenal to bear on Kravox's flagship. The asteroid field erupted in a blinding flash as the Ziri shock troops detonated their precision antimatter mines. Dylan watched in awe as several Sakari escort ships vaporized instantly, leaving Kravox's flagship adrift and vulnerable. "Now's our chance," Dylan barked. "Zara, Alara, coordinate the sniper teams. Hit them with everything we've got." Zara's fingers flew across the tactical console as Alara relayed orders to the Ziri gunners. The Prometheus surged forward, its newly upgraded weapon systems humming with power. "Molecular disruption warheads armed and ready," Zara reported, her eyes gleaming with intensity. "Fire!" Dylan commanded. A barrage of sleek projectiles streaked from the Prometheus, their trajectories weaving through the debris field with uncanny precision. They slammed into Kravox's flagship, the shields flickering and failing under the assault. Secondary explosions blossomed across the massive vessel as its main weapon batteries went dark. "Direct hits on all primary targets," Alara announced, her voice taut with concentration. "Kravox's ship is crippled." Dylan watched as Ziri boarding craft latched onto the stricken Sakari behemoth like remoras on a dying shark. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Captain!" Chen shouted, "detecting a massive power surge from Kravox's flagship. It's a self-destruct sequence." Dylan's mind raced. "Can we stop it?" "I've got this," Zara growled, her fingers a blur over her console. "Ektor didn't die for nothing. His intel on Sakari command codes, there." The alarms fell silent as abruptly as they had begun. Dylan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Self-destruct aborted," Zara confirmed, a grim smile on her face. With Kravox's flagship neutralized, the remaining Sakari vessels scattered like startled fish. But the Shiri were ready. Swarms of gunships pounced on the disorganized enemy, employing the sabotage tactics Zara and Alara had shared. One by one, the Sakari ships fell silent or erupted in flames. "Sir!" Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "A shuttle just launched from Kravox's ship. Oh no." Dylan's eyes locked onto the tactical display. The lone shuttle was on a direct course for the Ziri command station, its engines burning far hotter than they should. "It's Kravox," Dylan realized. "He's going to ram the station." "Not if we can help it," Zara snarled. "Tractor beam control, on me." Dylan watched in tense silence as Zara and her team worked furiously to lock onto the wildly maneuvering shuttle. At the last possible second, they caught it, wrenching it off course. The shuttle careened into the Prometheus's auxiliary landing bay, detonating with a muffled thump that barely rocked the ship. "Containment teams, move in," Dylan ordered. "Be careful, Kravox is—" His warning came too late. Reports flooded in of a cybernetically enhanced Sakari tearing through the Ziri security forces. Before anyone could react, Kravox had fought his way to the flight deck and commandeered a Ziri fighter. "All hands, brace for impact!" Dylan shouted as Kravox's stolen ship screamed towards them on a collision course. Time seemed to slow as Dylan watched helplessly, knowing there was no time to evade. Suddenly, Alara's shuttle streaked across their field of view. In a final, selfless act, she rammed Kravox's fighter mere meters from the Prometheus's hull. The resulting explosion rocked the bridge violently, consoles shorting out in showers of sparks. As the chaos subsided, Dylan looked to Zara. Her face was ashen, but her eyes burned with renewed purpose. They had lost a dear friend, but Alara's sacrifice had saved them all. "Status report," Dylan croaked, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, Chen reported. "Emergency force fields holding. Ziri reinforcements are mopping up the last of the Sakari resistance." Dylan nodded grimly. They had won, but at a terrible cost. As the adrenaline faded, the weight of their victory and its price began to sink in. The bridge of the Prometheus hummed with tension as Dylan absorbed the latest intel. Intercepted Sakari transmissions scrolled across his datapad, each line more chilling than the last. "This is it," he muttered, looking up at Zara and the assembled Ziri matriarchs. "Vazrith's bringing everything he's got." Zara's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. "My people will be the first target. We have to act now." Dylan nodded, his mind racing. "We can't match their numbers, but we might be able to throw a wrench in their supply lines. Buy us some time." He outlined his plan, detailing surgical strikes on key Sakari assets across multiple systems. The Shiri matriarchs listened intently, their massive frames looming over the holographic star map. "It's a bold strategy," one of them rumbled, "but the risk—" Zara stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'll lead the assault on my homeworld myself. We have contacts there, resistance cells ready to rise up. We can cripple their operations from within." The matriarchs exchanged glances, then nodded their assent. "Very well. We will fortify our territories while you strike at the heart of the beast." Preparations moved at a feverish pace. Dylan handpicked his strike team, a mix of hardened human veterans, Ziri shock troops, and Vasari guerrilla fighters. The Prometheus's newly upgraded systems thrummed with power as they made final checks. "Stealth drives engaged," Lieutenant Chen reported as they approached the outer defensive perimeter of the Vasari system. "No sign of detection." Dylan gripped the arms of his command chair, watching the sensor readouts with laser focus. Massive Sakari patrols crisscrossed the system, but the captured stealth technology held true. They slipped past unnoticed, a ghost among giants. Planetfall proved far more perilous. Zara's face was a mask of concentration as she guided them through a maze of automated defense grids and roving patrols. They touched down in the ruins of what had once been a thriving Vasari metropolis, now a stark monument to Sakari oppression. Rebel contacts whisked them through twisting underground passages. Dylan's enhanced senses, courtesy of Ziri bio-augments, picked up the acrid tang of fear mixed with stubborn hope. They emerged in a makeshift command center, where haggard Vasari resistance leaders greeted Zara with reverence. "We thought all hope was lost," one of them rasped, "but now—" Zara clasped his shoulder. "Now we fight back. We have the means to hurt them, truly hurt them. Are you with us?" The answering roar shook dust from the ceiling. Over the next cycles, Dylan and Zara coordinated a relentless series of strikes. Ziri demolitions experts reduced Sakari munitions plants to smoking craters. Human hackers unleashed viruses that sent Sakari logistics networks into chaos. Vasari infiltrators sabotaged shipment depots, leaving Sakari garrisons critically undersupplied. All the while, the Prometheus struck from the shadows. Dylan led boarding actions against Sakari resupply vessels, seizing vital intelligence and denying the enemy desperately needed resources. "Another successful raid," Zara reported, her eyes gleaming as she pored over captured Sakari databanks. "Their entire sector-wide distribution network is in shambles." Dylan allowed himself a grim smile. "Good. Let's see how Supreme Overlord Vazrith likes fighting with one arm tied behind his back." But their victories came at a cost. Sakari reprisals grew increasingly brutal. Death squads scoured liberated sectors, leaving a trail of horror in their wake. The resistance fought back with savage dedication, turning city blocks into bloody war zones. Dylan watched from a rooftop as Zara rallied a group of newly freed Vasari prisoners. Her words sparked a fire in their eyes, transforming broken captives into fierce freedom fighters before his eyes. A distant rumble drew his attention skyward. Massive shapes began to tenacity through the atmosphere, the vanguard of Vazrith's main invasion force. "They're here," Dylan breathed, activating his comlink. "All teams, this is it. We've bloodied their nose, now we just have to hold out until help arrives." He turned to Zara, seeing his own mix of fear and drive mirrored in her alien features. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, checking the charge on her disruptor rifle. "Always." Together, they plunged back into the fray as the skies above filled with the silhouettes of thousands of Sakari warships. The skies above Vasari darkened as thousands of Sakari warships blotted out the stars. Dylan stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, his face hardened as he surveyed the tactical display. "This is it," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "All units, prepare to execute Operation Shatterpoint." Across the system, resistance cells sprang into action. On the Vasari homeworld, Zara led a team through the ruins of a planetary defense station. They moved with practiced efficiency, planting charges on key power conduits and control nodes. "Charges set," Zara reported, her voice crackling over the comm. "Detonating in 3, 2, 1. A series of explosions rippled across the planet's surface. Massive defense cannons fell silent, their targeting systems scrambled beyond repair. In orbit, Ziri strike craft seized the moment, darting between the confused Sakari ships to seed space with glittering mines. Dylan watched as the first wave of Sakari ships blundered into the minefield. Explosions bloomed in silence, shredding hulls and scattering debris. The Sakari formation fractured, individual captains breaking ranks in panic. "Now!" Dylan barked. "Striker squadrons engage!" Ziri gunships and Prometheus fighters pounced on the disorganized vanguard. They struck with lightning precision, their weapons finding weak points in Sakari shields. As soon as the Sakari attempted to regroup, the Allied craft vanished back into the asteroid field. Again and again, they repeated this deadly dance. Each strike whittled away at the Sakari numbers, buying precious time for the next phase of the plan. Zara's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, the moons are in position, initiating Project Singularity." Dylan held his breath as carefully placed charges detonated deep within Vasari's moons. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to tear. Yawning black voids opened in space, their gravitational pull irresistible. Sakari capital ships, caught unprepared, were drawn inexorably towards oblivion. Vazrith's flagship, a behemoth that dwarfed even the Prometheus, barely avoided the same fate. Its engines strained as it pulled free, but not before losing a significant portion of its escort fleet. "Now's our chance," Dylan said, his eyes gleaming. "All commandos, prepare for boarding action. We're going to hit their supply lines." Dylan led the assault himself, his strike team a mix of hardened human veterans and Ziri shock troops. They materialized aboard a Sakari resupply vessel, cutting through surprised crew members with ruthless efficiency. "Plant the charges," Dylan ordered as they fought their way to the ship's core. "We need to take out as many of these supply ships as we can." As they worked, Dylan caught glimpses of the larger battle through the ship's viewports. The once mighty Sakari armada was in disarray, individual battle groups isolated and confused. Back aboard the Prometheus, Dylan coordinated with his allies to exploit the chaos. False sensor readings lured Sakari task forces into deadly ambushes. Conflicting orders sowed further confusion among the enemy ranks. Yet despite their successes, the tide of battle began to turn. Wave after wave of Sakari reinforcements poured into the system, their numbers seemingly endless. The Vosari homeworld itself became a hellscape of orbital bombardments and ground assaults. Dylan watched grimly as Allied positions fell one by one, the comm channels filled with desperate pleas for aid and final defiant battle cries. Just as all seemed lost, new signatures appeared on the long-range sensors. "Sir!" Lieutenant Chen called out, his voice thick with relief. "Human battle groups from the core systems! They've broken through!" A ragged cheer went up across the bridge. The battered Ziri ships rallied, mustering what remained of their strength for one final push. In that moment of hope, reality twisted once more. Dylan found himself suddenly transported, along with a handful of Prometheus crew members, onto the bridge of Vazrith's flagship. They materialized in the midst of startled Sakari officers, the air crackling with residual energy from the freak wormhole that had brought them there. For a heartbeat, both sides stared at each other in shock. Then all hell broke loose.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.